Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The crystal flute shattered against the marble wall, the sound sharp as a gunshot, freezing the breath in my lungs. I didn't flinch, I couldn't. Not with Cassian Vane standing less than a foot away, his hand planted firmly against the doorframe beside my head, trapping me in the suffocating luxury of his presidential suite. The city lights of Seoul sprawled beneath us through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a glittering abyss that felt miles away. But the danger wasn't out there. It was right here, radiating from the man whose eyes, the color of frozen obsidian, bore into mine with a predatory intensity. You think you can just walk away, Julian? Cassian's voice was a low rumble, devoid of the polished charm he displayed to the cameras. This was the voice of the wolf, the ruthless president of the Vane Consortium who had devoured his competitors to sit on the throne. After everything? I was just doing my job, Mr. Vane. I replied, my voice steady despite the frantic thumping of my heart. The contract is over. My father is dead. I have no reason to be here. Cassian leaned in closer, the scent of sandalwood and metallic rain invading my senses. His thumb grazed my jawline, a touch that burned like ice. That's where you're wrong, he whispered, his lips brushing the shell of my ear. You are the only one who knows the monster beneath the suit. You've seen it all. The blood, the tears, the weakness. And you think I'd let a witness like you roam free? To understand how I ended up pinned against a door by the most powerful man in the country, you have to go back 3 years. You have to go back to the storm that tore the sky apart, and the night the devil bled on my doorstep. My name is Julian Rice. At the time, I was 23, a medical student drowning in debt, living in the cramped servants' quarters on the edge of the sprawling Vane estate. My father was the head butler, a man of silence and unwavering loyalty to a family that barely acknowledged his existence. We lived in the shadow of the Vane dynasty, a corporate empire built on technology, weapons, and ruthless acquisition. It was a Tuesday, the kind of night where the rain lashed against the windows like gravel. My father had rushed out hours ago, summoned to the main mansion due to a security breach. I stayed behind, studying anatomy charts by the light of a flickering lamp. Then, the back door burst open. My father stumbled in, his uniform soaked, struggling under the weight of a man draped over his shoulder. Dad, I jumped up, clearing the table. What happened? Quiet, Julian. My father hissed, his face pale as ash. He lowered the man onto my narrow cot. Lock the door. Draw the blinds. If anyone asks, we have been asleep for hours. I looked down at the man on my bed. It was Cassian Vane, the heir, the crown prince of the conglomerate. I had seen him only from a distance, getting into limousines, flanked by bodyguards, looking like a statue carved from cold marble. Now, that statue was broken. His pristine gray suit was shredded, stained crimson. His skin was clammy, burning with a fever that radiated heat like a furnace. But it was the wound in his side, a jagged, ugly gash, likely from a serrated blade, that made my stomach turn. He's been poisoned, my father whispered, his hands trembling as he wrung out a cloth. Internal coup. His uncle. They can't know he's alive. The hospitals are watched. The private doctors are bought. So you brought him here? I whispered, panic rising in my throat. Dad, if he dies here, they'll kill us. If he dies anywhere else, the Vane Empire falls to tyrants, my father said, gripping my arm. You're nearly a doctor, Julian. Save him. That was the night my life ended, and a new, darker one began. For 2 weeks, I didn't sleep. The servants' quarters became a makeshift ICU. I stole supplies from the estate's medical wing, antibiotics, saline, sutures. I became the keeper of the crown prince's life. But it wasn't the surgery that bound us. It was the fever. The poison in Cassian's system was a hallucinogen, designed to drive a man mad before it killed him. It stripped away the layers of the CEO, the arrogance, the icy demeanor. It left a terrified, broken boy. I remember the third night. The storm had passed, but thunder still rumbled in the distance. Cassian woke screaming, thrashing against the sheets, tearing at his stitches. Get them off me, he shrieked, his eyes wide and unseeing, staring at the ceiling. Don't let them take it. Father, please. I had to pin him down, my body weight pressing against his chest to keep him from hurting himself. He was strong. Even in his delirium, his muscles coiled like steel wire. "Shoo. Cashin, you're safe?" I murmured, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "It's just the fever." He froze, his gaze snapping to mine. For a moment, he didn't see his servant's son. He saw something else. He reached up, his hand trembling, and gripped the back of my neck, pulling me down until our foreheads touched. "Don't leave me in the dark," he whispered, his voice broken, a sound so full of raw, naked vulnerability it shattered my heart. "Please. It's so cold." This was the man the tabloids called the Iron CEO, the man who fired thousands with a signature. And here he was, clinging to me as if I were the only anchor in a churning sea. "I'm here," I promised, stroking his damp hair, an intimacy that would have been punishable by death in the daylight. "I'm not going anywhere." I nursed him through the sweat, the vomit, the nightmares. I washed the blood from his skin. I held a cup to his lips when he was too weak to lift his head. I saw the scars on his back that no magazine had ever photographed. Old scars, from a childhood that was clearly not as golden as the world believed. I saw it all. The humanity he kept locked in a vault. And then, the fever broke. On the 15th day, I returned from my classes to find the bed empty. The sheets were stripped. A single envelope sat on the pillow. Inside was a check for an amount that could buy a house, and a note written in elegant, sharp handwriting. "Forget this happened. No thank you. No goodbye. Just a command and a payoff." I burned the note. I used the money to pay off my father's debts when he passed away from a heart attack 6 months later. I finished medical school, specializing in trauma surgery. I tried to forget Cashin Vane. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor. 3 years later, the Vane Consortium acquired St. Jude's Hospital. My hospital. I was scrubbing out of a 12-hour shift when the summons came. 2 men in black suits, earpieces, the standard goons. "Dr. Rise. The president requests your presence." "I have rounds," I said, untying my mask. It wasn't a question. They drove me not to a boardroom, but to the Vane Tower penthouse. The elevator ride was a silent ascent into the heavens. When the doors opened, I stepped onto a floor that cost more than my entire education. Cashin stood by the window, back to me. He was broader now, his posture emanating a terrifying authority. He wore a midnight blue 3-piece suit that fit him like armor. "You took your time, Julian," he said, turning around. He looked different. The vulnerability was gone, replaced by a hardened, polished veneer. But his eyes, they were the same. They held a spark of recognition and something darker. "Possession. Mr. President," I said formally. "To what do I owe the honor?" "I'm just a surgeon." "You are my surgeon," he corrected, walking toward me. The click of his dress shoes on the marble echoed like a ticking clock. "I've reviewed your file. Top of your class. Exceptional under pressure. Discreet." "There are plenty of discreet doctors," I said, holding my ground. "Why me?" He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. It triggered a sensory memory, the smell of fever and blood in a cramped room. "Because," he said softly, "I don't trust anyone else to touch me." He offered me a contract. It wasn't a job offer, it was a conscription. Personal physician. On call 24/7. Living in the penthouse. The salary was astronomical. The terms were absolute. I refused. "I have a life, Cashin," I said, slipping up and using his first name. "I won't be your pet." That was when he snapped. That was when the flute shattered. That was when he pinned me against the door and reminded me of the truth. "You've seen it all," he repeated, his forearm bracing against the wood, boxing me in. "You saw me begging. You saw me weak. Do you know what I do to people who see my weakness, Julian?" "Kill them," I challenged, my chin lifting. "Then do it. Stop playing games." Cashin's eyes narrowed. The air between us crackled with a tension that was part threat, part electric attraction. He wasn't looking at me like a victim. He was looking at me like a puzzle he couldn't solve. "I can't," he admitted, the words grinding out of him. "I tried. For 3 years, I tried to erase that night. But every time I close my eyes, I feel your hands on me. I hear your voice pulling me out of the dark." He leaned in, his nose brushing against mine. "You infected me, Julian. Worse than the poison. So what is this?" I breathed, my resolve crumbling under his proximity. Revenge. A cure, he murmured, his gaze dropping to my lips. Or a surrender. I haven't decided yet. The dynamic had shifted. He wasn't just the president, and I wasn't just the nurse. We were two men bound by a secret that could topple an empire. He needed control, and I was the one variable he couldn't predict. You can force me to stay, I whispered. But you can't force me to care. Not again. Cashin laughed, a dark, velvet sound that sent shivers down my spine. He pulled back slightly, adjusting his cuffs, the mask of the CEO sliding back into place. We'll see about that, doctor. Your room is the second door on the left. Dinner is at 8. Don't be late. He walked away, leaving me trembling against the doorframe. I should have run. I should have taken the elevator down and never looked back. But as I watched his broad back retreat into the shadows of the penthouse, I realized the terrifying truth. He was right. I had seen the monster. I had seen the boy beneath it. And God help me, I wanted to save them both. The weeks that followed were a psychological chess match played in a gilded cage. Cashin was a tyrant. He was demanding, mercurial, and dangerously intelligent. He dragged me to galas, introducing me as his medical consultant, parading me in front of the Shark Tank of Seoul's elite. I saw the way his rivals looked at him, with fear. I saw the way he looked at them, with contempt. But behind closed doors, the dynamic blurred. He would summon me to his study at 2 a.m., claiming a migraine. I would find him sitting in the dark, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring at the city. I would massage his temples, my fingers working the tension out of his neck. Why didn't you sell the story? He asked one night, his eyes closed, his head leaning back against my stomach as I stood behind his chair. The tabloids would have paid millions for the story of the vain heir crying for his mother in a servant's shack. Because I'm not you, I said quietly, pressing my thumbs into the base of his skull. I don't put a price on loyalty. He caught my hand, stopping my movements. He didn't let go. Loyalty. He tested the word like it was foreign. Is that what this is? Or is it pity? It's decency, Cashin. He pulled my hand around, pressing a kiss to the center of my palm. It was a gesture of shocking reverence from a man who usually wielded fear as a weapon. Be careful, Julian. Decency gets you killed in my world. He was right. The attack happened 2 days later. It was the annual shareholders gala, a black tie affair held in the grand ballroom of the Vane Hotel. I stood by the bar, nursing a sparkling water, watching Cashin work the room. He was magnificent, a predator in a tuxedo, charming investors while silently daring his enemies to strike. And strike they did. I saw it before anyone else. A waiter, moving too stiffly, his eyes locked on Cashin's back. He reached into his jacket, not for a wine opener, but for something metallic. Cashin, I screamed, abandoning the drink and sprinting across the polished floor. The room turned. The waiter pulled the gun. I didn't think. I just moved. I slammed into Cashin, tackling him to the ground just as the shot rang out. The bullet shattered a champagne tower behind us, showering the crowd in glass and expensive vintage. Chaos erupted. Screams. Bodyguards swarming. I lay on top of Cashin, shielding his body with mine, breathing hard. He stared up at me, his eyes wide, the mask completely gone. For a second, we were back in the servants' quarters. Just the two of us, amidst the storm. You idiot, he hissed, grabbing my shoulders. You could have been killed. You're welcome, I gasped, checking him for blood. Are you hit? No. He rolled us over, pinning me to the floor, his body shielding me now as his security team formed a perimeter. Stay down. His hand cupped the back of my head, pressing my face into his shoulder. I could feel his heart hammering against his ribs, a frantic, terrified rhythm. Later, in the safety of the penthouse, the rage came. Cashin paced the living room, stripping off his ruined jacket and hurling it across the room. I told you, he roared, turning on me. I told you decency gets you killed. Why did you do that? I sat on the velvet sofa, picking shards of glass out of my sleeve. Because I'm your doctor. It's my job to keep you alive. It's not your job to take a bullet for me. He stormed over, grabbing my face in his hands, forcing me to look at him. His expression was wild, desperate. Do you have any idea what would happen to me if you died? You'd hire a new doctor, I said, though my voice wavered. No. He shook me, just once, hard. I can't lose you. Don't you understand? You're the only thing that's real. You're the only one who saw me broken and didn't look away. If you die, I go back to the dark. I go back to being a monster permanently. The confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Cashin, I didn't corner you because I wanted to silence you, he whispered, his forehead dropping to rest against mine, his thumbs stroking my cheekbones. I cornered you because I'm starving, Julian. I've been starving for 3 years for someone who looks at me and sees a man, not a bank account. He was trembling. The powerful President Vane was shaking in my arms. I reached up, covering his hands with mine. The power dynamic that had defined us, master and servant, CEO and employee, predator and prey, dissolved. We were just 2 men, scarred by the same night, bound by the same fear. I see you, Cashin, I whispered. I've always seen you. He made a sound that was half sob, half growl, and then he kissed me. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, bruising, fueled by adrenaline and years of suppressed longing. He kissed me like he was drowning, and I was oxygen. I kissed him back, my hands tangling in his hair, pulling him closer, anchoring him to the earth. He lifted me, carrying me to the bedroom, not as a conquest, but as a treasure he was terrified of breaking. That night, there were no nightmares. No fever. Only the heat of skin on skin, and the quiet realization that the forbidden romance we had danced around was the only thing that could save us both. The next morning, the sun rose over Seoul. Cashin stood on the balcony, wearing nothing but a silk robe, watching the city wake up. I walked up behind him, wrapping my arms around his waist. He covered my hands with his, leaning back into my embrace. They'll come for us again, he said, his voice steady now. The wolf was back, but he wasn't alone. Let them come, I replied, resting my chin on his shoulder. I've handled your wounds before. I can handle a few more. Cashin turned in my arms, a smirk playing on his lips, not the cold smile of the CEO, but the genuine, rare smile of the man I loved. Good, he said, tilting my chin up. Because I plan on keeping you around for a very long time, Dr. Rise. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, not with chains, but with a bandage and a heartbeat. If you enjoyed seeing the mighty President Vane brought to his knees by love, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a man who threatened you to keep you close? Or is obsession a red flag you can't ignore? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.